Garrett Brown.
Here.
Scott Brown.
I am here.
Becky Decker. Scott Kipp.
Here.
Tom Pitt.
Here.
Sharon Pons.
Here.
Lynn Reed.
Here.
Greg Strand.
Here.
And George Strander.
Here. Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of prior meeting minutes, and you should have draft minutes from our March 21st meeting. Everyone had a chance to look it over and then entertain a motion to either amend or approve.
Move we approve the minutes as presented. Support.
It's been moved and supported to approve the minutes as drafted. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're bringing the matter to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes as drafted signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, they're approved. Correspondence, anything? Oh, boy. All right, moving on to order of business. The first thing is the update on the redevelopment committee and the comprehensive plan, and I'll have Danielle start this off.
Okay, so what I just handed out is the printout of the PowerPoint that I presented last night at City Council. For time's sake, I didn't do the PowerPoint for tonight, and also too, we can probably discuss a little bit further more of the details in the RRC progress report, just because Planning Commission is the one overseeing it. So the quarterly progress report for RRC is much longer than the last one, which is a good thing. So it means that we've made quite a bit of progress this quarter. So I just wanted to highlight some of the main things. A few things have gone from yellow to green, and a few more have gone from red to yellow, which means that we're just kind of, which again, red is no progress made, yellow is in progress, and then green is completed. So for the first one on there, I did want to note that the instead of having the, after feedback from the MEDC, in terms of the comprehensive plan, I moved that from green back to yellow just because we do need to have future land use maps and a zoning plan in place to complete the master plan as, or the comprehensive plan as it would follow for the best practices outlined by the Redevelopment Ready Communities program. So that is in the works right now. John currently has an intern in his department who has experience with GIS, and she's a master's student at Wayne State University in urban planning and design, is it? Urban planning and design, so she's got experience there. So that's in the works right now. And then the other major thing, as you all know, we approved the capital improvements plan. So under 1.1 on the second page of that RRC quarterly progress report, that is now in green, and that is done. And as you all know, that was done so that we could apply for the ICE grant, and so that grant was submitted, hopefully getting money for infrastructure in the city. And then in terms of some of the other major things going on right now, let's see, I'll take us down to, let's see here. In terms of the business growth and development, that actually is closer to the last page, but that is one of the major goals outlined by the comprehensive plan. And so in terms of the strategic direction for the Albion EDC, Amy DePraise, since she just came on last fall, she obviously hasn't had enough time to flesh out an entire economic development strategic plan. So she has a strategic direction that she outlined for 2016-2017, and that will be fleshed out into a full plan by the end of September is her goal for that. And so that has moved us forward in terms of best practice 6, as well as she has been spearheading the marketing committee, or a community marketing group. And so she's organized that, and they've begun discussions about a comprehensive marketing and branding strategy, and so that will hopefully come within the next 2 quarters is what we're hoping. So around the end, again, around the same time that we would have the economic development strategic plan in place. And let's see here. So in terms of best practice 6, we're making a lot of progress there. Priority redevelopment ready sites are being actively marketed right now on Zoom Prospector. So if we go up to best practice 5 there, the sites are being marketed, and as we move forward, we're going to be doing more community input for some of the redevelopment ready sites. Maybe some more for Dalrymple, Union Steel, things of that nature, so that we can have a community plan in place to see what people would like there, and then we can move forward with trying to attract more developers there. Let's see, so for example, with the Dalrymple property, a $125,000 grant was secured to demolish that, and that was with, good thing that we had the input, the Calhoun County Land Bank worked with the city and the EDC to put that together to have a community input session for that, and so the input from that really helped to secure that grant. Let's see, and then moving up on to best practice 4, community does have a dedicated source of funding for training now. So city council set aside money to send city council members to training and any other boards and commissions to some of the MML trainings. There's one coming up on Saturday, April 22nd. That doesn't sound right, because Saturday is not the 20th.
Yes, but that's just for council.
But that's just for council, right? Okay. So let's see what else we have on here. So continuing with that, we are also trying to put in place a guide to development, as well as feedback mechanisms for developers and businesses that are coming in, so that they can let us know in terms of our processes what could have gone smoother or what wasn't very clear, so we can continue to improve essentially how we process like incoming building permit applications, things of that nature, business permits, stuff like that. So that's some of the things that are going on with RRC. Those are the major ones. And so, as we know, the comprehensive plan pretty much lines up with RRC almost exactly with a lot of these. But a few things I'd just like to highlight that aren't necessarily RRC related would be things such as the MDOT Summer Youth Employment Program. The city is working with MDOT trying to bring that to Albion so that there will be jobs available for youth through the summer. They're kind of like a summer internship program that are paid, and so they provide employment for youth, as well as help to beautify some of the corridors, the major trunk lines in the city. Let's see, and in addition, as we all know, the EDC has sponsored a series of small business and entrepreneurial workshops throughout all of 2017, and they have free one-on-one counseling available as well for small businesses. So a lot's being done right now to help the existing businesses, as well as those that are trying to start up too, a lot of entrepreneurs in the community. Other than that, another major focus of the comprehensive plan is to ensure that the downtown developments are balanced. And so there are a lot of for-profit developments going on right now, such as the Brewing Company, we have the hotel, Brown's Home Furnishings just moved in, we've got Yesterday's News, and then the Bohm Theater, of course, expanded. There's the AIM Community Thrift Store, so there's a lot going on right now, and more coming. So things are going very well in terms of that. And then in terms of the pre-K through 16 education system for the community, the Marshall Public Schools has established a community advisory committee so that people from Albion do have a good amount of say in terms of what happens in Marshall Public Schools, given that they are operating within Albion city limits. And in addition to that, now students have the opportunity to do the early college program if they choose to go to Marshall Public Schools. So they're able to graduate from high school with an associate's degree by just doing one more year with no extra cost. So I would say that probably covers a lot of it. And then other than that, of course, we did submit a grant to the Michigan DNR, another trust fund grant application to continue expanding the river trail on the north side of town, and that would go along Austin Avenue. And so that would help to not only clean up that Austin Avenue as it heads out of town towards Marshall, but it'll also give us a chance to spend some Act 51 money that we do have to spend 10% of on non-motorized transportation, and it will help with creating a safer, more accessible route for bikes, pedestrians, and elderly, kids, things of that nature. So that covers a lot, but we've had a lot of progress even just over the past quarter. So if anyone has any questions about it or any clarification, I can explain some things further.
Any question? Yeah.
Do any of the trails that are currently developed or being thought about for grant use, do any of those tie into the North Country Trail system?
Yep, they all tie into the North Country Trail system. I also sit on the Calhoun County Trailway Alliance Board, and so we have been trying to make sure that we are lining up with the North Country Trail as well as the Iron Bell Trail and the Great Lake to Lake, and we know that those all converge in Victory Park, and so trying to really market Albion as kind of the trail hub where those all come together. And there's actually going to be a Michigander bike tour going from Port Huron to South Haven, and that's because they do a different trail route every year for the Michigander bike tour. And so this year, or in 2019, I'm sorry, it'll be going through Albion. So we're trying to really break ground and get this moving so that, you know, we've got the hotel in place, we've got nice trails, try to get people to stay here for a day or so. So
Do they allow bicycles on the trails?
a lot of bicycles on the
Do they allow
trails.
horses on the trails as well?
No horses are actually allowed on the trails.
Some bike, nothing motorized?
Well, motorized chairs would of course be okay, but no other like motor vehicles, just because horses and bikes don't mix, and a lot of other motorized vehicles don't mix with bikes and pedestrians too. So, so as of right now, no, but there are long-term plans to do an equestrian trail throughout Calhoun County because that is definitely a demand here.
Is anything being thought of as an amenity which makes this the trail destination?
There's a lot of conversations about that right now. There might even be people here that can speak to that better than I can. But we are talking about how do we actually improve amenities here, not only having certain businesses that cater to bikers and hikers, but also the possibility of campgrounds or just improving park amenities in general too, like seating, lighting, wayfinding signage is a big one, trying to attract people to the downtown when they are using the trail. Say they're coming from out of town, they're coming south from the south in Homer, or they're coming from Marshall, then they have something that actually directs them to what is here in Albion.
Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
So to add to that, the county actually submitted a separate Natural Resources Trust Fund grant during the same application period for an acquisition. So the Natural Resources Trust Fund is split into development grants and projects and then acquisition projects. So one that was submitted, you know, somewhat in coordination with the cities, was to do an acquisition project that would do, I think, what you're talking about, and get a piece of property, a pretty significantly sized piece of property, about 65 acres, that would become the trail hub, the Eastern Calhoun County Trail Hub, where, you know, additional recreational trails where maybe equestrian could ride, where people could park, where people could use a bathroom, where, you know, maybe even overnight would be a possibility at some point, but then to build that property out as an Eastern Calhoun County Trail Hub, so people coming through would see more than just a passing of a little sign on the side that says there's a trail here, that they would really recognize this as the trail hub.
Seen that a lot, in a lot of communities. Yep, here's our trail. It doesn't go anywhere and there's nothing to draw to it, it's just there.
Yeah, I think Lansing is a really good example. They have the river trail that goes throughout Lansing, but also in central Lansing, there's where a bunch of trails converge, and there's a bunch of loop trails, dog park, sledding hill, a ton of stuff for people. So it'd be really cool to see something like that in the near future.
Any other comments, questions? Yeah.
I took time out and really went through this. I printed it out early. And I'm just telling you, I'm just very impressed and encouraged by the progress that's being made in relation to the recommended certification. So it's very encouraging. It's
been a lot of work on many people, from many people. So I'm very appreciative of all of the work that people have done, especially people on Planning Commission, City Council, Amy at the EDC, John has done a lot of work, Cheryl, a lot of people to thank for all of the progress that's made. So, and I'm very happy with the RRC progress so far, the process so far. Working with the MEDC has been great. Very helpful and responsive, and they walk you through it, so it's very nice. It's a great program.
Any other questions or comments? Danielle, I had just a couple. On the RRC document for the date completed expected, how does that get filled in? Because I noticed that some don't have anything in there, so how does that get established?
That, that's kind of ongoing as we are looking at, you know, we kind of decide that as we go. Obviously, we can't have a, we don't know for some of the things. We just don't know when the expected completion date will be. But for example, so for the economic development strategy, that, you know, we've put a due date of September 30th because that's just when Amy expects to have that completed by. There are a lot that currently don't have any, and overall, I don't think it'll take us more than 1.5 to 2 years at most to actually complete all of the tasks. So that is one thing that I didn't fill in as much this time. For the first quarterly progress report, I did, but I didn't find it was very necessary to do so. The MEDC doesn't expect it for every single one yet.
And you mentioned something about a marketing plan.
Yes.
And just in an effort not to recreate the wheel, I'm wondering if we have something on our shelf from 10 years back when we had a design charrette and a number of architects came into town and you know, spent about a few days here in Albion and created a sort of a plan. It might be helpful to look at that if we can find it, because one of their ideas was to use the motif of the molder, which is, you know, about the sort of industrial heritage of this community. It's a unique statue here. No other community has something like that. So I thought they had some interesting ideas. Obviously, money was an issue back then, as it is now, but maybe with some of the resources we're able to find, it might have some ideas that would be of interest.
Absolutely, yeah, we'll look into that, and the RRC program does have a guide, a marketing and branding strategy guide, so they have a nice guide to walk us through the process so that we don't have to spend as much money on consultants or things of that nature. So.
Great. Anything else? All right, thank you very much, Danielle. Great work. All right, moving on now to discussion, updates, changes to ordinance 2011-01 Community Gardens, and John, I think that's you, right?
Okay, originally this ordinance was written in 2011. Of course, there are a number of items that have been of concern on both sides, whether it's the residents in the area or the individuals who would like to have a community garden. And going back through this, I've looked at both sides of basically the coin. The individuals who have homes in the areas, and the individuals that may live in the area or not live in the area and want to have a community garden. Couple of things that I would suggest definitely remembering that these are residential districts. They were not zoned for commercial or similar. So as I went through this, I tried to find a middle point where it would most likely work best for the residents and for optimizing the most area for the gardens. So as you go down through the draft, there's a couple of first things. For example, under A1, community gardens are not intended for the for-profit commercial farming operations. Put that in there to make it quite clear that we're not looking at this to become commercial areas down the road. Setbacks on B, we had some concerns about the setbacks and having to have too far of a setback in areas where there weren't houses directly there and or being able to get a little bit closer to property lines. So in making a change to that, you'll see that all garden plots and any permitted structures shall meet the front yard setbacks of the zoning district. And then exceptions, in the case where there are no residential structures within 100 feet of either side of the parcel where the garden would go, or proposed garden would go, and then a minimum setback of 10 feet rather than coming right up to the sidewalk. So it doesn't create a difference of what the surrounding neighbors may not want to see having going all the way to the sidewalk. Minimum side setbacks of 5 foot and minimum rear setback of 5 foot. And keep in mind any of this, if you have any questions or suggestions as I go along, please stop me.
John, just for our purpose, what would be, let's say, R1, R2 general setback requirement?
Typically in an R1, R2, or an R3, your front yard setbacks are 25 feet.
Okay.
Going down to C, took out what was previously,
Is that from the street or
no, that's from the property line.
25 feet?
From a front, typically in any of your R districts, there is a required 25-foot setback. Now granted, there are a lot of homes in Albion that do not meet that, but they were built before 84, when most of the zoning came in for the setbacks on houses. So anything that's built, for example, if you go into residence, there's not really a zone district for residents that doesn't have at least a 25-foot setback from the parcel lines. So typically most parcel lines show up at, not always, but typically they're usually about at the back of a sidewalk where the right-of-way ends. So your house or any other structures would have to be at least 25 feet back.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I understand why we're doing setbacks for the buildings being at least 10 feet away from the sidewalks, but why the garden plots themselves?
Well, in looking at, and with talking with the various individuals, the 10 foot is to keep it from coming all the way up right to the sidewalk, for the simple fact that what I might want to have as a garden, if I were doing a garden and bringing it right up to the street, may not be appealing to a house that's 100 foot down the street that's used to having setbacks and not front yards that are totally filled in. So that's why I went with a 10 foot rather than.
My opinion on that would be maybe a height-wise of what's planted can't grow, you know, within 5 feet, or I mean, I would go with a 5 foot setback from the sidewalk, and then anything within 10 feet of that can't grow more than 3 feet high or something like that, where you don't have like corn growing there that's 6 foot high and you can't see.
And that's up to planning commission. If you'd like to see it changed, that's what I say, speak up. What I've tried to do is go through this and in a consensus of what I was able to get.
Property, you know, more of the property for what they do, smaller lots.
John, have you had residents actually complain about the idea of a community garden?
Well, I've had residents who are concerned about having gardens that are not maintained, or if they have fences, for example, as we go through here, you'll see some of the other changes. You have to realize that people who have investments in homes, you know, some are total 100% for community gardens. I haven't had any really bad feedback about gardens to begin with, period, overall, but the idea of having large gardens or gardens that come all the way up to the street doesn't always sit well with the general public. There's a general public part that still want to see grass in the front yard.
But I would agree with Scott that maybe limiting the height But it seems like we're taking available ground away from the people who wanna use it for garden.
Well, that's where you have people who also don't wanna have something detract from their properties where they have well-maintained front yards too, so, I mean, it's both sides of the coin.
Is a fence considered a structure?
A fence is, as we go down through here, you'll see a fence now, for example, on any property, you can have a fence that is 4 foot tall in the front yard. Whether it's,
Setback required, you go right up the
it
sidewalk?
can go right up to the property line, not on the property line, but right up to it. Okay?
Unless there's an agreement with the neighbor, then you put it on the property line.
So,
Well,
and
the reason
there,
I asked, I know we were requiring some kind of fence or snow fencing, or that's not.
well, we're not requiring any type of fencing. That's up to the individuals who are putting the gardens in. And as we go down through, you'll see some of that, which you probably already have seen.
So,
Okay.
I have just one question I'm curious about. So that, what you've been talking about is the setback from, I guess, the property line.
Property line, yes.
Now, I know in the area, that's my vision of life, you know, if I have a backyard, is there a particular distance that has to be from that property line?
The backyard would be 5 feet.
Okay.
And the same thing from the side lot lines. And the reason for that being is to have some area where you can keep it maintained around the perimeter without going right up to the perimeter and then having to either go on to other people's properties to maintain it and yet keep it cut and in a manner to where it's acceptable to everyone that's in it.
What are the side and rear setbacks right now? Are they 5?
If you go under the setbacks that are required in the districts, if you went with the district setbacks, typically you're 6 to 10 foot per side and 25 foot rear setback.
So we're actually gaining some property.
You're gaining property by this.
Taking away property, we're giving property.
You're, exactly.
You're taking the rear and side setbacks, but also
Right.
taking a little bit from the front, but giving it in the side.
Correct. And basically, it's similar, this setback would be similar to what an accessory structure would be, because accessory structures are allowed to go within 5 foot of a side or rear yard setback. So you're gaining more property actually overall, quite a bit.
I've had a couple people ask how did they get in on that? Is it just certain groups that have it, or that maintain the gardens, or whatever?
Anyone can apply for a community garden.
But you have to have your own property to put it.
You can, in the case where some of the gardens that we have right now are actually the one that's off between Jefferson and Albion, not Jefferson, Albion and, or Jefferson and Mallory. Yeah. That part of that is actually on Calhoun County Land Bank property. They actually have a lease on that. So it can be on somebody else's property as long as you have their permission and
So
you're
if
okay.
they wanted to work with people who have that lot, say, how would people about finding out who they should go to?
Well, to begin with, they can come down to City Hall and you can either see myself or, well, probably me, more likely than anybody else. I was gonna say I could stop and see Cheryl, but
I'll send them to you.
then you'll send them to me anyway, and the front desk will send them to me, so. They can stop in and I can get them an application. And then if they're looking at some property, if they're not sure who the owner is, we can always find that out too for them, so we can get a hold of them. That's not any problem at all.
Chief?
Two things I think we need to consider here too. It doesn't specify 10 feet from the sidewalk, it just says 10 feet setback.
And
And,
that is from the parcel line.
right, what's the parcel line?
That is where the property meets the right-of-ways or other property lines. Parcel lines are actually the property lines.
Okay, because there's some areas where 10 feet back would be the sidewalk from the curb, and there's other areas there is no sidewalk.
Right, but in some cases, well, let's back up. Public sidewalks are on street right-of-ways. Some of the right-of-ways are wider than others, some are narrower. So I have not yet run across a public sidewalk that's on a private piece of property.
But I thought the parcel was from either the center of the road or from, even though there's a right of way there.
No, if you're in the township, that's different. In the city, you're looking at plotted parcels. And the property lines are actually at the edge of what the right-of-ways are for the city. They don't run in the center. There are a couple, let me take that back a bit. There are a couple of them on the north side of town where I think there may still be one or two properties that go out to the center, but that's it.
And then there's other areas though that don't have sidewalks.
Right.
How would that address them?
It'd still be from the parcel.
But is the parcel X number of feet from the curb, or is it from the curb?
The parcel is actually gonna be a set number of feet depending on what the right-of-way is through there. So if you have a 60-foot right-of-way, basically you can look at it in a couple different ways. If the road's actually laid out as it should be, centered, it should be 30 feet back from the center of the road. Okay. Not necessarily always that's the case though.
Okay, I just wasn't sure how that was laid out,
Right.
whether we were talking the same distance everywhere we're at, or we might have some issues if we don't word it properly.
Oh, and with this being written the way it is, there's only two places in the whole city I could think that would even come close to it. But,
Yeah.
Just so I can be clear, so are these rules that are being implemented for community gardens, do they change rules for private gardens? There's a separate section non-private in that. So somebody who owns a piece of property and has a garden there is subject to the private property rules, not.
Right, not to the community garden, correct.
Is there a reason we wouldn't make those the same, just out of curiosity, same set of rules?
I mean, you could if you wanted to. Actually, the private, I think is a little bit more liberal than the community gardens, but then again, you're looking at houses that are in place and such, yes.
Not just houses, property.
Property,
Not
yeah,
houses.
right.
Because people own property.
Right.
They have gardens there,
But-
not a house.
Right. But they are required to meet certain setbacks too.
So I know we've talked about it a lot, but should we then have something in here that actually defines the difference between a community garden and a private garden?
There is, actually in 2011, there is another section that is specific to residents.
Defining what it is,
Yeah.
can separate it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Is there anything in here that defines what they have to do to take care of the land between the garden and property?
It states in there that all of that property will be maintained.
Okay, but if I were to tell it with the rest of it, so it's just dirt, I mean, you know what I mean, I'm just saying.
I know what you're saying.
And I can see people, because they don't wanna maintain it, doing that. Should we have something in there that says it has to be grass, maintain mowed, or something?
Well, it does refer to noxious vegetation.
Right.
And if you're tilling farther up towards the line than 5 foot, then I would say you're tilling that for different reasons. But I mean, we can put it in there. I mean, if you want to, if the planning commission wants that in there, definitely we can put that in there. If it will, if you're saying that it shall be maintained with.
Right, I'm just saying, if I'm the neighbor and I'm concerned about how it looks, that would be a concern of mine, how they maintain that area between the property line and the garden, so.
What it is it is in there that is to be maintained as, for noxious, same as under noxious vegetation, so. But there again, if the planning commission would like to see something under worded different, we definitely can do that. Yep.
So let's try to get through it, and we'll.
Okay.
Maybe we'll be able to
Moving on down, to C, B has been crossed out and changed, and to give it a little bit more definition to maximum coverage, the combined area of all buildings, not including principal structures, excluding hoop houses, shall not exceed 300 square feet. And that is any accessory structures that are put on there or existing for the community garden will not, the combined, whether it's one building or 3 or 4 buildings, the combined square footage of them shall not exceed 300 square feet. Hoop houses,
Is that per parcel? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is that like, if you have multiple parcels, could you?
well, that's something that that the planning commission probably might want to look at a little bit too on how you're going to consider. The way it would be actually written is per parcel. Okay. Some of these gardens though are made up of several parcels the way it was done so far though. So hoop houses is kind of one of those things that trying to find hoop houses even in different areas, and that is kind of a real gray area. But in an effort trying not to have where you have a hoop house or hoop houses covering an entire parcel, basically suggest to go with 35% maximum coverage of the property. And if there is a principal structure on the property, say a home, because someone could say you can have a community garden on their premises along with a home, that house would be included in that 35% coverage, so that you're not covering a whole lot or, out of the norm of what typically. And typically, in residential, 35% is the maximum coverage of a house, for a house on it. So kind of following the same guidelines there, if that's fine with the planning commission. On page 2, fences. The way it was in here before for temporary fences, left it wide open. There was a lot of various discussion I had with various people. A couple of things to take in consideration, and this was brought up by a number of people. Orange snow fence really pops out there. We're looking at trying to have a community where as people come into town, whether it be to stay a night at a hotel or looking for residents to stay or buy, orange snow fence to a lot of people is somewhat, if not quite a bit, offensive looking. So as I go down through here, it addresses that, and it addresses some of the setbacks and requirements that should have been in there to begin with too. So under 2B, temporary fence may be installed and maintained and be constructed of standard fence materials. That was in there previously. Standard fence materials is not snow fence. Plastic snow fence or similar plastic fence shall not be allowed. So, C, temporary fence setbacks, minimum side yard setback of 5 feet for temporary fences. There again, in order for the fences, temporary fences usually don't hold up as well as a chain link fence or split rail fence that's put in permanently. Quite often you'll see where there needs to be maintenance taken care of it to begin with, so that 5 foot around the perimeter, your garden's 5 foot in, so you're able to maintain without having to go on somebody else's property to take care of it. that's a suggestion that I have on it. So you have a minimum 5-foot side yard setback, minimum rear yard setback of 5, and a minimum front yard setback of 10 there again. So when you have temporary fences, they're not fitting in with what you typically would see as a chain link or such. Temporary fence height, not to exceed 4 feet in the front yard. That's the same as a permanent fence. On corner lots, not to exceed 3 feet. Same as a permanent fence, whether it's a chain link and or picket fence for sight, line of sight. And then not to exceed 6 feet in the backyard, same as a permanent fence. So, moving down to G, general description describing types, methods of application, storage of proposed pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, and any other chemicals that will be used. I know that was brought up by a couple of planning commission members before, and it makes sense to know what's going to be used, and that's not something that's not allowed to be used in residential areas. 2, evaluation of existing soil conditions and plans to mitigate soil issues as necessary. So if there is a problem with the soil, which sometimes we do run across in town, we have a requirement for that to be addressed, so we don't wind up with plants that are glowing in the dark or whatever it might be. So I shouldn't say that. But. 3, the types of machinery and equipment proposed and description of the noise, vibration, smoke, odor, dust, dirt that may be a nuisance to other residents. I'm sure nobody wants to hear loud equipment or equipment that's going to wind up causing a nuisance.
Is there, like, any kind of like irrigation systems where people put those kind of, I don't think someone's gonna do that, go that complicated, but that'd be covered?
Any type of equipment that may wind up being a nuisance, at least the planning commission would have the chance to know what's going to be used.
Isn't that covered in our noise ordinance anyway?
It is to a point, but it's also quite vague in some parts of that. So, and there again, in the noise, I mean, if you're looking at, as well as I do, decibel meter. So, there are times, yes. There are times, but even during the times that you're allowed to have equipment, I mean, if you wind up with a piece of equipment under that doesn't have mufflers on of some type or what have you, you have people who work third shift and they're sleeping during the day. H, community garden must be designed and maintained so that water, chemicals, dirt, mud, or fertilizer will not drain onto public property, into the streets, or adjacent properties. There again, where you don't wind up with fertilizers and or other type of pesticides and or dirt, earth that may wind up washing down off.
John?
Yes?
You might want to add drain or transport, blow. If you rototill an acre and you're a little slow and you're in a drought and a windy day, you're going to have a dust storm in the neighborhood.
Okay. And then I is a little bit similar to one of the previous ones, but power equipment, tools, supplies, and machinery shall be stored in an enclosed structure or removed from the property daily. All chemicals and all fuels shall be properly stored off the ground in an enclosed locked structure when the site is unattended, so that we don't wind up having some kids walk in or on and digesting some things they shouldn't be drinking. And also we don't have equipment sitting all over the place, which becomes a nuisance to other residents.
Yeah.
Do they additionally have to get a permit to put up a enclosed structure?
Enclosed structures, as long as it's not over an enclosed structure in residential areas, as long as it doesn't exceed 200 square feet, does not require a permit. It is supposed to be shown on the plan, though, when they submit the plan to Planning Commission. So,
Do they still have to permit to get it, or apply?
right, if it's, right, when they submit the application for the garden, it's gonna ask what structures they're under, okay? If it is over 200 square feet, whether it's an accessory structure or other, by state code, it's required to have a permit. And then, going down to, 03, sketch plan showing the property location and size with dimensions. A, show location on all existing and proposed structure of all existing and proposed structures, and that they're again noted to include measurements from parcel lines, just to make sure that we have them set back to minimum setbacks. And that concludes what I've gone through and put in for suggestions to amend and or add.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Just regarding the fencing, I know we talked about that plastic fencing, but that fence comes in green and brown as well. Instead of, can't we just specify only green or brown fence or something like that?
If the planning commission wishes to, we can do that. The reason
Temporary with that plastic fence is a lot easier to move and keep and.
I understand. The complaints I have on plastic fencing is when it comes to any type of, when you start getting any type of wind. And I know I have had the same problem with putting up temporary plastic fence where we have a hazardous condition, and anytime you get much of a wind, it starts to deteriorate quick. Or you also have people that are have a tendency to want to pull plastic fencing around. So, but I mean, we can change it. That's strictly up to. Yeah, and that's a real good example. What happens to that real quick? You know, whether it be somebody walking by or wind. So whether it's orange, green, or whatever it may be. So, but if planning commission would rather, it's up to you.
Any other comments or questions?
I wouldn't, just a comment, I also wouldn't be opposed to some other green or brown fencing. Just my 2 cents worth of it. I don't see a problem with it. It's temporary fencing.
Just easier to take down and put away.
Oh, it's definitely easier. Yeah.
It's for temporary purposes.
And if that is the consensus
Yeah.
of the planning commission.
With the other type of fencing that colors you're talking about, I would like to see something added where it has to be maintained in a good condition. And I think that might alleviate some of the problem, but it has to be, it can't be sagging, it can't be blowing. And the whole purpose would be to keep, children or animals out, so I think keeping it maintained would be a high priority.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
The orange plastic fence that we use down the Highland Park, that did, the kind that had the holes in it so the air can blow through.
Yeah, well, there's a couple different things. There are different grades of orange fencing you can get. too, in thickness. But overall, the bulk of the orange fencing that I run across and individuals that have brought it up or run across is at some point in time, when you have storms and winds, it just does not hold up well. But that's, like I said, that is up to the planning commission.
Yeah.
The problem with the cheaper fencing, because like John said, there are different levels, is that it's also a hazard. It can hurt animals. I mean, as far as birds, it's very, very dangerous. It's down, it's torn, birds can be hurt, other animals can be hurt. Children, I've seen them playing with it and thinking it's a toy. It's just, it would have to be really high quality or maintained, I think.
Any other comments or questions?
So, I guess just one question. If this, I guess the implication for the Albion Community Garden organization, they would be prohibited basically using that. They'd have to put up something. Robust. Is that?
Well, right now, they have the okay for what they presented. So it would be from this time forward as it become amended.
I thought it was conditional until we had a chance to rewrite this. I thought those were conditional approval. I don't recall that specifically, but
There were some conditions on them meeting the setbacks that we had at the time.
right.
I think if they had something up already, we'd have a hard time enforcing
Right,
it. But
exactly.
until it's put up, we probably could change.
Okay, any other questions, comments? John, in my opinion, on the setback, it makes sense for there to be something there, simply to not force someone onto the right-of-way, simply to maintain it if they wanted to. On C1B, the 300 square feet is separate from the 35%, right?
Yes,
So it could get a relatively high percentage
yes.
covered by structures, right? At G, it seems to me you need some additional wording, because you simply say a general description. Is this something they're supposed to produce to us?
Yes,
So a general description will be provided to the city describing?
correct, to the city, to the planning commission,
Okay.
describing. I mean, I can have it, we can write it towards.
No, I just wanted to know.
Shall, or just trying to be a little bit.
Would that be added to the application and move to O?
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Ken?
So,
Ken?
let me ask the commission what you want to do. Do you want to, I guess our options are to have something amended come back, or to put it on for public hearing, right? Those are two options that I can think of right off the bat.
Right. Also, typically with an ordinance, the council also has a public hearing. So I don't think it's necessary to have two of them on this, but that is an option that is available to you.
Okay, so, well, of course, we're looking at it, so is that something that's supposed to come through us and then sent to the council, or what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and I assume we'd allow people to come forward and talk if they want.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So, what's everyone's pleasure?
I'd like to see an amended version come back to us at the next meeting. Based on our comments.
All right,
But
Is there any-
motion or something, or?
well, let's just see where everyone is. I mean, yeah,
My only, and I wouldn't object to that, my only question would be timing, as far as do we need to act on this quickly so people have time to get their gardens in? I don't wanna take so long that people don't have time to participate in this. So that would be my only concern.
but we already have an ordinance, so there's already something people can follow now.
Okay.
This would just be a change.
And currently, we're only dealing with 2 that we've already approved, so this would really only affect anybody that comes in and submits for one in the future.
This primarily just has more of a guideline to go by.
Is anyone not, or against having a new version come before us? I would assume most people would be okay with that. If that's the case, we should give John some pretty specific feedback, so, how about on B, setbacks? Do we have some, does anyone have anything specific they want to see different from what he has proposed as an addition?
I think those setbacks make sense based on my understanding now of setbacks.
Okay.
So basically, 10 in the front and 5 in the other.
Right.
Correct. And that is, if
But
there's,
side and rear.
if there are homes abutting on both sides, then they would have to meet the 25 as to other homes, the way this is written.
Well, what about areas that
not.
those homes don't meet the 25? Couldn't we word it more or less so that?
We can, what we can do is go ahead and I can put in there, just as it is stated in the zoning itself, if the adjacent properties, homes do not meet the required setback, then you go the average of the homes on that street, the setback of what they're at.
Right, so they meet the front of the house,
Yeah.
basically.
Yep. So I can get that in there.
Okay.
If that's what you prefer.
Anything on C? Any changes there?
Just a question about we talked about the per parcel. Because like with the current entity that's in the space between Jefferson and Mallory, that's multiple parcels, right?
Yes, it is. That's 9 parcels.
Okay.
9 parcels on that one, 2 on the one on Center Street. I think it's 2, no, maybe it's 1 on Center Street. And then there's 2 on Albion and 2
So-
parcels, Albion and here.
Then should we address in here that if the parcels are connected being used for it, they don't have to have the setback?
Yeah, we should,
Right,
yeah.
so that those, you know, the 2 parcels don't have to
Right.
have 10 feet between
Right.
the garden when they're.
Put it right under to where it's,
Right.
yeah.
So let's go back to Garrett's question. So what is the normal square footage of a lot?
The,
Depends where you're
depends where you're at. The actual average width of a lot is supposed to be at 60 feet. The smallest lot that's supposed to be allowed to be built on in the city is 40. The majority of them are at 60 or 66 feet in that area, by 132 deep. And there's some more that's much less than that, and there's some that are over that, so. So to come up with an actual averages, depending what part of town you're in.
Okay, so you used the term parcel in the second sentence of your maximum coverage paragraph. So the question is, what if you use that also in that first sentence?
Can do it.
I mean, I think that was the intent, but maybe not. Because you could have a community garden for an entire city block potentially, and to be limited to 300 square feet would not be
Right.
reasonable.
Right.
What about on 2B with the fences? Right now, the addition would be plastic snow fence or similar plastic fence shall not be allowed.
I guess if we're gonna split hairs and say we're gonna start referencing color and durability, if we're gonna say the color, that's fine, but durability, I wouldn't know what that means. That'd be a tough one to hold somebody to. We can't just say cheap.
Depends, yeah,
Expensive,
because,
and I think we,
Cut by a minimum bill.
yeah, and there's probably, there's a standards, and D14, snow fence. There's gotta be some kind of standard out there for durability of that snow
I
fence.
think
to
I think
her
if you
point-
go online right now, you can usually find about 3 different thicknesses on them. I know there's at least 2 with most companies.
Let's see,
Yeah,
there's a one, when I was thinking about the snow fencing scenario, you think about those, kind of metal rods that are, like that thick, and you do that, and but, if someone's not putting it together in that way, you could have great, you could have the thicker fencing, flimsy support, so it kind of.
That's why I'd say what Becky said, it's gotta be maintained vertically and securely, something to that effect.
yeah.
Does it make it easier if we just establish a minimum of such and such mil thickness plastic? And whatever would be appropriate, that or bigger, whether you wanna go with 6 or 12 or whatever you think.
Oh. What I can,
This thickness fence or thicker.
okay.
Yep, on the color thing, I mean, is there anything which prevents a homeowner right now from putting up a bright orange fence?
On a permanent?
Yeah,
No, I mean, if they actually found bright orange fence,
Yeah.
that's,
So-
I mean,
it might be a little dangerous to start talking about colors here, although, I understand your point of view, but I don't know, yeah.
Well, and I would just say orange is typically, I know it's used in a lot of other places, but it's typically used for safety alerts.
Mm-hmm.
You see it in road construction, people have it on vests, typically it's fire safety. If we can minimize the use of it, that would be good. The more people see it, the more every day they see it, the less they pay attention to it.
All right,
Not
so
respect it when they see it.
I'm not sure if you got any direction there for,
I think I'm still spinning it.
Just my opinion, it would be bad to use orange to outline a community garden.
I'm not sure I would want to be the lawyer defending the city if we were getting sued because the person couldn't put an orange fence up, that's all. I don't know if we have a defense.
And that's kind of one of the reasons put under plastic fence, period.
Mhm.
But it's,
So, one question, so, back to that same Jefferson Mallory area, does it matter if let's say they have a rectangular plot with a garden, and it's far enough back from any other, the parcel lines where it's not really, 'cause those are really kind of interior to that area. If you put the orange fence around that, that makes sense. Are we talking about putting it around that, or are we talking actually putting it around the parcel line?
well, it would be around the parcel lines, set back at least 5 foot in.
Are these parcels that we're talking about, you talk about land bank land?
We're not just talking about land bank land, we're talking about,
Could be
Various.
right next door to your house.
At your house, you also have to have it like that?
You're gonna have a community garden.
if you're gonna have a community garden,
Or community?
right.
As,
Cause I was just thinking, because if it's land bank land, you really can't put anything in it's gonna leave, so you can't put something down there, stable enough to where you can put fencing on it.
Well, you
That
can-
would be something
You can put in metal
that
fence posts.
down and the pole move too.
So let's focus on 2B, and that we're talking about temporary fences. We're talking about whether we want to proscribe certain kinds of temporary fences, so that we can give John at least some direction.
Yes.
Yeah. No? You're not talking about that?
I think allowing for a temporary fence to be plastic, to your point, to try to say that it has to be a certain color, probably, I wouldn't wanna be defending that either, but I'm not a lawyer. But can we make a recommendation? That's not necessarily an enforcement, that's not necessarily an ordinance, but it is a recommendation that the fence be brown or green. I would think we're not gonna have an issue if the recommendation is in there. But if we can't enforce it, even if we make a requirement, then at least it's in writing.
Yeah, but the recommendation really wouldn't do anything.
No.
it may make us feel good, but, I mean, no one would have to follow it.
It would not have to, but
So our question is, do we want something in here, an additional, about temporary fences that we want in the ordinance? Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
So, very quickly, so the question is, how temporary is temporary?
Temporary is taking it, your temporary fence is taking it down at the end of the growing season and putting it up at the beginning of the growing season.
Okay, so that's that, and then, I just wanna kinda go back to what I was saying like earlier, so, we're not talking about, you know, if you had a, like I said, just an actual, the actual garden relative to the size of the parcel. What we're talking about is putting the temporary around the parcel and not just around the garden area. And I think that might make a difference, because if you're driving down, you see like even if it is orange and it's like in the middle of the yard, you say, okay, that's a garden, they're trying to keep things out. But if it's like right,
But the garden can go all the way up to the same setback that the fence can be. So you have to think about it as if it's 5 feet back from the sidewalk.
So, yeah, and that's one of the main things that was brought up at the last meeting, is that, from some of the public, was that the setbacks they felt were going by what's required for the district was way overboard. Because they want to optimize the most growing area, so.
yeah.
Thank you. Mike, I have two concerns. One would be, I would prefer how you actually proposed it to have not to allow snow fencing, period. My concern is what you brought up earlier, that there are residents that live in these areas, and I've been sitting here thinking, I would hate having that in my neighborhood. I would absolutely hate driving down the street and seeing that. I really would. The other concern I would have is, how are you going to enforce it? You're already having to cover so much of the city and your responsibilities. Who's going to enforce if there isn't fencing down anywhere? And what would the penalty be? And how would, I mean, you're not gonna want officers enforcing that. Are we actually proposing something that isn't going to be enforceable, or is gonna cost the city money enforcing it? Why not just eliminate it entirely and not have it?
Not have what?
Not have the snow fencing.
leave it as is.
And leave it as is, and just not have it, not deal with it.
Just say standard fence material.
Yep.
And that's primarily, that's why I didn't put in there orange snow fencing. It says plastic snow fence or similar plastic fence shall not be allowed, so.
Basically saying that the snow fence is not standard.
Correct.
Okay.
Because it is
I'll withdraw
temporary.
my support for plastic fence.
Pardon me?
I'll withdraw my support for plastic fence.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
One question. So the question I have there is, so let's say there's no plastic fence, and the community garden or whatever the entity or person has this garden here. What materials then? Is it just like a metal or?
Well, there's actually a number of fences that are metal and such that are made for gardens.
Okay.
There's, if you look, for example, if you stop up the street at our one supplier of fencing in town, they have various types, and they have fencing that's actually closer in size towards the bottom and larger as it goes up, so that smaller animals are not able to get in at the bottom, and then it keeps larger animals like deer and such out from the higher.
Yeah, that's what I don't think about with the, fencing, keep the animals out. Because up in the area of Jefferson Street, there's 5 deer. And,
Well,
I mean,
the height limitations are not gonna stop.
Deer are gonna, deer themselves, we all know they can jump a 4-foot fence pretty easy. Probably some of them, a 6-foot fence wouldn't be out of the question.
Okay, so let's say that parenthetical goes away. C and D, fence setback, fence height for the temporary, we're okay with that? At least at this point. I mean, I'm not asking you to approve it, I'm just wanting to move forward so we can have something brought back to us.
Did you
Yeah.
say the statement about plastic snow fence and similar plastic fence shall not be allowed goes away? I thought,
I thought we were gonna keep
I
that.
think the
keep the plastic
Keep
snow
it as
fence
is.
or keep that in there, okay, fine. All right. All right. Height, setback, now, how about, following Tom's suggestion of moving G into O? Because basically it's a description which has to be provided, and the thing that gets provided to the city is the application.
Makes sense.
Does that make sense? Okay. Anything on H or I?
I know you had one on H there as far as,
I think some kind of statement about wind erosion.
Okay. Again, I mean, we're gonna see it again, so just to get it close. All right. So, are we all okay then for John to come back with a different, new version? Okay, great.
One thing,
Yeah.
I think we should add in there about keeping that mowed grass and being mowed on the setbacks.
It actually is, and,
Er,
there's another
I can-
section that addresses
I
that.
can put it in there to be more specific though, that's not
All right,
Operating standards, L, the area around the community garden shall also be properly maintained and comply with the city's noxious weed, grass, and brush ordinance.
Right. I think it should be maintained as grass though, should be added in there because you could till that and there wouldn't be any weed.
okay, yeah.
that's,
John, under L, there's a 3 there, is that a mistake?
I'm sorry, what's that now?
L, there's a 3 there with nothing by it.
That's where we're inserting should be.
Okay.
Be maintained as grass.
I didn't know if something got left.
Because if I didn't wanna come mow it, I'd just till it up and leave it as dirt and you wouldn't have to worry about it.
Pave it, yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I was wondering if we could have more clarification on I, as far as what type of lot would be required, and not leave it up to different people what they felt was appropriate.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
I'm sorry, I'm on I.
Correct.
With the, chemicals and everything being stored in a lot structure, I think we need to be more specific with what type of lock we would like. You know, like a padlock with this kind of lock, with that kind of lock, but something that the city or you would think was secure.
I don't know that, yeah, nothing's secure.
Well, something so that
Thanks, Chief.
it's not.
Trust me.
You're not reassuring me, Scott. Something that wouldn't be as easy, you know, I don't wanna just have a push button or something like that, or one of those itty bitty padlock things that you can buy.
I mean, you could put
No,
padlocks in
there's
there.
a word, there's
Right.
a word
Yeah.
for what she's getting
Yeah,
at.
something
Right.
like
A
that.
keyed lock.
Keyed lock,
Keyed lock.
padlock, or combination or keyed?
Just something that kids aren't gonna break.
I agree, a combination key lock, cause I think you could say that something that's latched is locked. You
Right,
don't-
okay.
Yeah,
Well, I could be wrong, but aren't some of the things that is used for
Say a
gardening
lock.
actually something that people can use for drugs and stuff like that?
that, oh,
Wouldn't some of the chemicals used for gardening
yeah.
be something we don't want kids to have access to?
yeah.
Okay, so, John, I'll get you, yeah, you know what to do now, right? All right.
Yes, indeed.
Good, thank you. And we do not need C. Any public, no public, so no public comment. Any commissioner comments? All right, I'll
I
take,
think just for the record, I think we all very much support community gardens.
Yes.
It's just worth breaking this down.
we're doing our due diligence, but yeah, we are.
myself personally, I love community garden, I like the idea.
But you also have to support the community around the community garden as well, so.
Absolutely.
So I'll take a motion to, is there some, yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Chairman, in the back of your packet, I believe you have the draft of the annual report from the planning commission that goes to the city council. But I'm not sure if you received the correct version. Does yours start with membership at the top? Or does it?
Not all the members are listed.
Right, okay. I printed off, that was a working copy, that wasn't the final copy, I'm sorry about that. If you could take one.
That would be for your enhanced,
Serious renewal coming up at this end.
So if you'd like, you could review it, and if there's any additions or comments, I'll come back at the next meeting for your approval.
Okay. Anything else? Sure.
The street construction has started on Superior Street.
Yeah, we will all pretty much figure that one out.
Yes.
Where'd the trees go?
They, yes. They were shredded.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.